Welcome back to our final look at measuring the economy. So, how this correlates or translates is when we're looking at economic growth, one of the things we're looking at are how you can increase your growth or your real GDP over time is through international trade. So, we break down this idea of international trade and the concept of absolute and comparative advantage to explain why countries should trade. Here's a couple of cool examples looking at the global economy and then a country that hadn't traded for a long time, Cuba, and the effects of trade on that economy. So trade has been around throughout history. It's good, Silk Road. It's bad, spread of bubonic plague. We see the top exporters and importers from the United States. Okay, and while we look at trade, and sometimes we view it in a negative context, it's really just supply and demand. If you can get something at a lower price, you'd want it. So that's why we trade. Just because it goes across countries, people tend to forget the laws of supply and demand and start to get very fearful of international trade. So we want to break that down. And without international trade, your iPhone would not function at all the same way that it currently is. Of all these parts that go into making your iPhone, the ones in red are the ones found on the periodic table. And it just so happens that some of those parts are called rare earth metals. Now, they're not rare on Earth. They're just hard to extract. But those metals, a couple of them, only occur or are found in the country of China. So quickly flip over your iPhone, look at the back, or maybe even your Droid, designed by Apple in California and manufactured in China. So if we don't want international trade, if we're very fearful of international trade, then our iPhone doesn't exist as it's made. Because not all those elements are found within the United States. So the idea of trade is countries will be better off with trade. You have access to more options. You have specialization, which leads to lower prices. Being self-sufficient, you limit the amount of resources, sellers you have. You're going to pay higher costs. The quality is going to be worse. So the need for trade is very important. And our goal is to show that through this concept. So the idea of absolute advantage means absolutely, without a doubt, you are better than another nation at producing a resource. Okay, with that possible, or with that absolute advantage, there's no need for trade. However, the idea of comparative advantage states that there are countries that can produce a good or service at a lower cost. So the difference between these two, a good is something you consume, a service is what the United States has become. We're a service-based economy. Like somebody mowing my lawn is a service, okay? They do it at a lower opportunity cost. Whoa, this brings us back to Unit 1. Opportunity lost. Lower opportunity lost. Who's giving up the least is what you should be thinking. Who would give up the least amount of production when comparing two goods? And if there's a country that has a lower production cost or is giving up less, then you should specialize in trade. So we do need to focus on our comparative advantages to explain trade. Here's an oversimplification or a good example. Here's the amount of oil that we currently have in the United States as far as the basins and stuff. And this is just lower 48. If we included Alaska, we'd see we have a ton more oil in Alaska. We do have a very good amount of oil in the United States. For the first time ever, 3 to 4 years ago, the United States decided to start exporting oil. We don't rank in the top 20 as far as exports of oil in the entire world. However, we are in the top 20 in the entire world as the amount of oil that we have in the United States. What about a country like the United Arab Emirates, a top 5 exporting country in the world? There's the amount of oil they have, deep wells, but not as much. Here's the United Arab Emirates within the United States. Why would I show you this? Well, let's think about our comparative advantage, our opportunity cost. Think about the costs that go into production. In a country like the United Arab Emirates, those costs are relatively low because you're all right next to each other. Your location on the globe, right in the middle of the Pacific Indian Oceans over here. right? Think about all the amount of people that you can transport or export that oil to. And think about the United States and the large mass of ocean that they have to track to get these to high levels of consumers. Well, those costs are much cheaper, so they do it at a lower opportunity cost. And that's why the United Arab Emirates is a major exporter in the world as far as oil, and the United States is not. The cost to transport oil all over the United States and get it out to where it's needed to the most amount of consumers is higher. So we want to show you how to calculate opportunity cost to figure out comparative advantage. All right, absolute advantage is really straightforward. Absolutely, without a doubt, who produces more cheese? And there's some breakdowns of this scenario as you keep going. So let's just fast forward, try these practice ones. You should pause the video. Let's look at absolute advantage here. Who absolutely without a doubt produces more cheese? Well, that's the country of Japan. All right, who absolutely without a doubt produces more fish? Japan. So would these two countries need to trade? Well, we don't know until we know what their comparative advantage is, their opportunity cost. So the simplest way to do this and to highlight the concept of opportunity cost is ratio. Let's do this. For every one cheese I make, how many fish could I have made? For every one cheese I make, how many fish could I have made? Trying to figure out opportunity cost. To do that, we want a ratio. What could I have produced? 80 over what I am producing. How many times is 40 going to 80? Twice. That's for every one cheese I make, I could have produced 2 tons of fish in the same time. Well, let's look at Japan's opportunity cost. 200 divided by 50. 50 goes in 204 times. All right. Couple different ways to think about this. Who has the lowest opportunity cost? Who's giving up the least? Well, the country of France. They're giving up the least when they produce cheese, giving up the least amount of fish. So I want this country producing cheese. Or think about it, who do you want producing fish? Would you rather have 4 or 2? Regardless of how you feel about fish, then make this cornflakes. This could be anything. Well, you want 4 of something in your world. And you want 4 because the more stuff there is in your world, the lower the price. So I want Japan making fish. So the comparative advantage in fish is Japan. Comparative advantage in cheese, again, because they're giving up the least, is France. That means that France specializes in the production of cheese. Japan specializes in the production of fish, and they trade their surpluses. Both nations benefit. Both nations save costs trying to produce both things. They actually create more. They create different varieties, and it's better off for everybody. So absolute advantage was the country of Japan for both. Comparative advantage, when you put it into a ratio, gives us France and Japan. So you can practice some of these problems. They're realistically set up in the same way. This chart is the same as a production possibilities curve. So I just go Atlantis and Xanadu for my 2 countries. I'd put cars and tractors as my things, write out the numbers, and you can sort out absolute and comparative advantage as well. Same thing with this Ashna and Luna problem. I would just sort out who has the absolute advantage in production of food, who has the absolute advantage in the production of machines, and then sort those out. Do not worry about trade between the 2 countries. Until next time, take it easy and good luck.